What's up, YouTube land? It's Noname here. You guys also know me as Kush from the Hub. I'd like to start off by saying thank you guys for tuning in. Those of you who are new to the channel, subscribe, like, and share. This is I think this is my very first collaboration I'm having on the channel. I've done collabs on other channels before. And I just want to say thank you to Dan from 5WideFootball from coming on to this channel. And he actually had me on his channel this past Friday. We did a great video about Giants free agency. In fact, it was so good that we didn't even get to finish it because we were getting into the topic so much. So I'm just going to hand it over to Dan right now. And once again, guys, go over there, subscribe to him, like the video, share it. His link will be in the description.
Thanks, Kush. Yeah, we had a great time. Got really in deep with the Giants free agency. It was very fun. Like Kush said, I've got a blog, YouTube, and a Twitter account. It's 5WideFootball. It's run by me and 4 of my friends. We just talk primarily about fantasy, but you can't talk about fantasy football without talking about the real thing. So we had Kush on to give us some more Giants insights, and we're hoping to post live streams every other Sunday up until August, and then go to weekly, knock on wood, as long as we've got the NFL season this year.
Oh man, we could, that could be an interesting talking point. I've been thinking about doing a video about that, but it's just like, it would be like completely, I guess, opinion based, and like I'd just be going off my own intuition, if that makes any sense. And I'm not sure if that would make for a too much of a good video. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but we could talk about that a little bit. Yeah. What I want to get into first, however, is I guess a quick recap for those of you that didn't see the vid on Dan's channel. Once again, go check it out. We talked about James Bradbury and Blake Martinez for the most part. I think we both agreed that they were good signings, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
And I wanted to get back in very quickly to Blake Martinez, just because today I was on Twitter, going across Twitter and whatnot, and he signed his contract, I believe, yesterday. And then there was an interview that came out today about Blake Martinez saying that, the Giants were a no-brainer choice. Patrick Graham was the smartest coach he ever worked with. And now we got a bunch of beat reporters and scouts saying, Blake Martinez has a chance to do really well with the Giants because of the fact that he won't be a cleanup linebacker as he was in Green Bay. And I believe, if that sounds familiar to any of you listening, this is something I've been saying for a very long time. He won't be a cleanup backer here with the Giants, and I'd just like to get your opinion on that, Dan. You don't necessarily have to read the article, but I guess the quick facts would be Blake wanted to come to the Giants. Part of it was because of the connection to Patrick Graham, and part of it was because he saw that he wouldn't be a linebacker just meant to stuff the run and clean up any tackles.
That's 100% actually what we talked about, which is funny, which was number one, that he had one of his best seasons while working with Graham. Him and the other linebacker they got there, Kyler. And you mentioned that being a big thing. And you also mentioned, I asked, how is Blake going to do in pass coverage? And you said you didn't know because the Packers don't use him for anything but a run stopper. So it's very funny that you were ahead of the curve, beating a lot of these other beat writers out. And you're on the same page with what Blake was thinking himself. Hearing that is very uplifting as a Giants fan.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive. And I would like to reiterate, it's we don't know for sure, but I guess with the facts given in front of us, you can definitely infer what's most likely going to happen. I guess what's plausible, right? Nobody can tell the future. In the words of our coach, Joe Judge, his famous line from his opening press conference, we ain't Miss Cleo, we can't see the future, but you can definitely, I guess, infer some things. And I just want to get that back out there to Giants fans that might be worried, we basically got another Alec Ogletree. This guy is just an average linebacker. You don't stumble into 155 tackles and lead the NFL in tackles. Like, that just doesn't happen, And so what I want to get into now is Cameron Fleming, who we also addressed, and we talked about what does this mean for the Giants draft? From your perspective, Dan, right? What do you think the Giants are going to do? Just, purely off of what you observed.
Well, what do I think they're going to do and what I like them to do aren't necessarily the same thing.
I'd love to hear both.
What I think they're going to do is I think they're going to take a first-round tackle. I think they have to. It's their biggest hole. What I would love, and the problem is he might not even be available, is I'd love, like we talked about before this podcast, I'd love for them to get Isaiah Simmons in the first round. I think he reminds me a lot of Brian Urlacher, maybe even a little bit more athletic. People might know Urlacher was a safety before, switched to linebacker. If you're getting a slightly more athletic version of Brian Urlacher, you're getting a future Hall of Famer if he puts in the work.
And that's really what's really been the most talked about thing about Simmons is his versatility. He's kind of the human embodiment of a Swiss Army knife. You look at any scouting report or even look at the tape, there's a reason the guy ran a 4.3 at the combine. And now I don't put much stock into combine numbers, but when a linebacker runs a 4.3, you definitely, heads are being turned here. Simmons did, he played, I don't think there was a position that he played on Clemson. More so he was just all over the field. And that's why it's kind of difficult for some people. They're like, oh, what is he going to be in the NFL? Is he going to be a middle linebacker, an outside linebacker, or a defensive back even? Because he can play a little bit of strong, maybe free safety. Where would you put him, Dan?
I think you put him right in the middle linebacker with his size. Because like I said, I think his best lineup, and people forget, Brian Urlacher ran a 4.55 40. So,
which at the time, guys, was amazing.
Yeah.
Just getting that out there.
And he's a little bit bigger than Isaiah Simmons, but I think you put him in the middle because that's the guy you want running your defense. People don't understand. It goes middle linebacker is basically your quarterback, then safety. And those two guys have to be good at reading quarterbacks, moving guys in the right position, and being able to switch coverage real quick. So if you're a middle linebacker and you have that safety experience of reading a quarterback's eyes, and with his speed, you can quickly come up and stuff the run, watching the quarterback, knowing, okay, he's handing it off. Or if you get caught out of position, you're quick enough and good enough at reading the quarterback's eyes to say, oh shit, this is play action. If you're running a 4.3 and you're playing middle linebacker and you're coming up to stuff the run and you're able to notice it's a play action, what do they do a lot on play actions? You hit a lot of slants right into where those linebackers are. You want them to step forward and then you hit a slant. If you've got a tall, fast, athletic middle linebacker that's played coverage before, he's batting that slant down. Or better yet, he's picking that off.
Amazing point you brought up there, especially with the middle linebackers, basically quarterback of the defense. This is another thing I'm not sure if I've explicitly stated it, but I've tried to get it across to some Giants fans, is the fact that, listen, I'm not going to be mad if we take Isaiah Simmons, but one of the reasons I'd be glad if we do is that he would impact the defense much more and be a much more, I guess, immediate positive impact than, say, if we take a pass rusher. Because while pass rush is important, that middle linebacker spot, like you said, the quarterback of the defense, you don't have a leader of the defense. You don't have somebody that can sort of coordinate that defense on the field. Your defense not going anywhere. You know what I mean? With a pass rusher, he can be stopped. He can have a bad day, especially if you have just one, which the Giants right now have none. I think a middle linebacker would impact the defense more.
Yeah, I think the middle linebacker, just like the quarterback's number one, and then you build from there. All the great defenses in history, I mean, look at the Ravens defense for years. They all have that middle linebacker. And then you can build, and like I said, a large part of it is because the middle linebacker puts guys in position to be playmakers. If you have a great middle linebacker that's good at reading teams, it's almost like having a defensive coordinator on the field with you.
Exactly. And even for some of these Giants teams, we never had, Antonio Pierce was a really good linebacker. I mean, I guess you could argue if he's in a great linebacker conversation. Maybe you could put a little bit more stock into that, Dan,
I don't think
when I get finished. You don't think great, really good? Right? Yeah, he was really good. Reason those Giants teams worked out, though, and the reason they were considered some of the greatest defenses is because we had more than one pass rusher. We had a Strahan, we had a Tuck, we had a JPP in I think it was his rookie or second year. We had an OC. We don't have that right now. So if we take a pass rusher, right, even though a lot of Giants fans, they want the pass rush to be fixed right now. So do I believe it. I'm tired of seeing quarterbacks have all day sitting in a lawn chair eating a hot dog in the pocket and the Giants can't get to them. I'm tired of seeing that. But adding one guy through the draft isn't going to fix anything.
And the reason why the Giants want pass rushers so bad is because we, firsthand Giants fans, if you've been a Giants fan for more than 10 years, firsthand saw what a great pass rush can do. I mean, Michael Strahan kept the team relevant when they were struggling after Kerry Collins a little bit there, and before Kerry Collins too, I guess, the late 90s and the early 2000s, minus the year we went to Super Bowl, that couple of years where we had Kerry, we went to Ravens Super Bowl, and I'm ranting a bit, but he was able to keep the defense solid because he constantly harassed the quarterback. That being said, it's just like if you're looking elsewhere, you can say, well, like Barry Sanders kept the Lions in games because he was a great running back. You would still, a middle linebacker and a quarterback can affect the game more on the defensive end and a running back. They can affect on more plays because with the defensive end, if he's really that good and the rest of the defense is bad, they're just going to run screens and pitches to the opposite side of the field. They're just going to constantly roll the quarterback away from the defensive end. I actually, and this is so funny, I watched the Giants-Bills Super Bowl from the early 90s. The year is escaping me right now. Scott Norwood, wide right, because my wife bought me those, and there's sports on. In the Giants, I don't know if you know, I don't know how many people listening even know, but take the time to Google Bruce Smith. He was the defensive end for the Bills. It's between him and Reggie White, greatest defensive end of all time. And the Giants negated him by just running Jeff Hostetler bootleg to the opposite side all game long. Bruce Smith was killing our tackle, and he just couldn't get to the quarterback because you would bootleg out, you'd have the running back chip on him. And Jeff Hostetler was on the other side of the field by the time he got around the defender, the tackle, and the chipped running back. If you have two good defensive ends, then you can't bootleg to the bad defensive end.
Then it's a little bit more
Then
difficult.
Bruce Smith gets himself a dozen sacks and the Giants lose the Super Bowl. But
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm ranting. So you go.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's a great example. You know, it just goes back to if you got just one guy, he can easily be negated, whether it's, like you said, just working tactically around him, pitching to the other side, bootlegs, or just runs to the other side, or you could even just get an extra tight end in there to chip block, just straight up double teaming him, getting two guys on him and whatnot. He can be negated. So, you know, just one pass rusher isn't really going to do anything for your defense. But speaking of pass rushers, and I wanted to get into this a little bit because on your blog, you had a great article out there about free agency moves. Am I correct? Just general free agency moves. Yeah. So, you know, going with that topic of pass rushers and free agency moves, what do you think is happening with Jadeveon Clowney?
It's twofold. Number one, I think it's health. And number two, I think it's money. So you can't do the physical right now, which is why Clowney and why Cam Newton aren't signed, because they both can play. Mm-hmm. They just both have had health issues. And second, it's how much money Clowney wants. I was looking at a guy that I believe is fairly comparable to Clowney when they're both on the field, but he's on the field a little bit more, in Chandler Jones. Mm-hmm. And Chandler Jones made $9 million last year, and he's going to make $16 million this year. And then he's going to make $14 million, I think, in the last year of his contract, which is $39 million over 3 years, spread out a little bit. And I don't know what the full contract was, but I remember that was the 3 years I looked at. Clowney's asking for something like 3 to 4 years, looking at the mid 60 to low 80 million. He wants 20 plus a year, and he doesn't play 16 games.
Exactly.
I just don't understand it. I mean, so how can you give him a better contract than the guy who got 19 sacks last year and played every single game? How can you give him a contract that's more than J.J. Watt's contract? And J.J. Watt, I know, obviously has had some health issues and isn't the player he was. But when J.J. Watt signed his contract, it was slightly lower.
He was possibly the best defensive player in the league. And at the time he got that contract, I'm sure he was in the conversation for best defensive end of all time.
Yeah. And so Clowney and Watt played on the same team, and Watt was the better player.
Yeah.
There wasn't a debate. So how are you going to tell me, even with salary cap going up, that Clowney can get paid more than Watt, can get paid more than Chandler Jones? It's not going to happen.
And we got into this a little bit on the last call. I'm not sure if it was before the last video or if it was actually during it, but Chandler Jones, and I'm not surprised if any listeners out there have never heard his name before, he's the best defensive end you've never heard of, or the best pass rusher you've never heard of. This guy has consistently either led the league in sacks for the past 4 years or been in the conversation for leading the league in sacks for the past 4 years. One of the best defensive edge rushers out there, consistency, and you don't hear about him because he keeps... I mean, it's a very harsh term, but, he keeps his mouth shut and plays the game. It's very harsh. I wish there was another way you could say he's just quiet. And he does his job, and he doesn't even ask for that much money, as shown by Dan saying the guy made $9 million in the past year or so.
I think it was before the video. We did talk about it a little bit. It's funny. I think I mentioned this to you. Chandler Jones went to the public school that I would have went to if I hadn't gone to a Catholic school in my hometown. One of the contributors on 5Wide, Mark, played football with him for years. And it's just funny because so everyone around me knows who he is and knows how great he is, but you go out of that area and they just don't know. I think a large part of it is he had one really good season with the Patriots, and then they traded him to Arizona, which is in no man's land. And for whatever reason, because Bill Belichick's history, people seem to believe if you get traded by Bill Belichick, you must not be good. Mm-hmm. He has made mistakes, guys. And Bill Belichick
has made mistakes. Yeah, I mean, given he's Belichick, but Chandler Jones is definitely one of those mistakes.
And the other thing is, Belichick is fine having the 5th or 6th best defensive end or linebacker or something leave and taking the 10th best because he believes he's smart enough to, with that savings, still do better.
Basically scheme them into looking like the 5th or 6th best.
Yeah. And it's hard to argue he doesn't. We'll see what happens without Tom Brady, but if the Patriots compete and make the playoffs and stuff again this year, I hate the guy, but hey, it's hard to argue results.
It's hard to argue with history also, But that whole Chandler Jones or I guess Jadeveon Clowney situation with how you're going to pay a guy that much when he doesn't deserve it. This was another thing we didn't get a chance to get into last time. It's just salary cap, free agency, the market in general for any and every position in NFL free agency is just crazy and stupid, quite frankly. And it needs to change somehow. Guys are getting overpaid. Guys who don't deserve $100 million are getting $100 million, and it just keeps going up and up and up. As of right now, there's no end in sight. What do you think about it?
I think you look at the St. Louis Rams, looking no farther than them if you want to see that. The St. Louis Rams went out and overpaid everybody. They went to a Super Bowl. They blew it. They probably should have beat the Patriots. Jared Goff did not look very good. Todd Gurley was not healthy for that game. But now they've had to get rid of very good players. They had to get rid of Clay Matthews. They haven't been able to re-sign guys. They had to cut Todd Gurley, who I'd like to know your opinion on how you think he looks in Atlanta. maybe not on this podcast, but I think he's going to be a huge fantasy freak in Atlanta because Matt Ryan gets the running backs involved in the passing game, and he's got great hands. But you can just see what happens if you there's two problems. Number one or two guys getting too much money, and number two, the way the NFL sets it up, they can backload the contracts and then cut you without ever really paying you your true money. And both of those need to be changed.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the CBA just got passed, and I'm sure one of the reasons they didn't put something in place like a cap per position or something like that, because I said, like, I don't care who the player is, you shouldn't be taking 20% of the cap. I'm sure one of the reasons they didn't put in anything like that was because the CBA, which was already controversial, would have probably not gotten passed if they did something like that. But they need to do something, both for unfair injustices to the players, such as them not getting their money paid and getting cut, but also it's an injustice to the team that has to pay one guy 20% of their cap.
I'm not going to argue with you. Not going to argue at all. And I think part of that is one of the player reps is Russell Wilson, who's a great player, but also benefiting from that overpaid.
Russell Wilson, and he's getting a lot of money. I won't say he's overpaid, but he deserves it. But he's definitely going to be one of those guys that's deserving and that's getting the benefits of getting the massive amounts of money that quarterbacks are getting. But let's get into general NFL free agency. We mentioned the Cardinals a little bit. And the Cardinals, they definitely made some moves in the offseason. Were they on your list? And if not, where would you put them?
Overall, I didn't do an overall who did the best. I probably would have put them at the fourth or fifth best overall free agency moves. But I ranked the top 10 just single moves. I did put them on there twice. I felt getting rid of David Johnson without having to give up a pick and getting some value back was a great move. I put that at number 3. And then at number 1, same trade, the fact that they got DeAndre Hopkins. For, in my mind, less.
Oh, so you kind of consider it as two separate moves.
Yeah, because you look at it, every expert was saying that to get rid of David Johnson, they were going to have to give up a pick and pay a portion of the contract. They got rid of David Johnson and got value back. So even if they had just gotten the picks that they got without DeAndre Hopkins, so they just trade David Johnson and a 4th rounder for a 4th and like a 2nd rounder to the Texans, that alone I felt like would have been a top 10 fantasy move, free agency move. I'm sorry.
That's another thing. That was definitely a fantasy move. I don't think anybody saw that happening.
Yeah. And every expert I read was like, David Johnson's going to get traded because they like Kenya and Drake more, but because of his contract, the Cardinals are going to have to trade David Johnson and a 3rd round pick for like a 6th round pick. I'm like, okay, that's what they're going to have to do to ship that contract. All right. And I'm like, some team will take that because some team will feel that they're a running back away. And I even thought the Texans might take that because Carlos Hyde left. What shocked me is then the Texans shipped DeAndre Hopkins, and I feel like the Texans got less for DeAndre Hopkins than the Vikings got for Stephon Diggs and the Giants got for Odell Beckham. And DeAndre Hopkins is definitely better than Diggs, might be better than Beckham. I don't get it.
No, I'll go on record and say he is the best receiver in the NFL.
I fight you tooth and nail. That's Michael Thomas. I know you might say system receiver in Drew Brees, but the stats he put up.
No, Michael Thomas has definitely proved that he's not a system receiver. For Hopkins, what tips me over for him is he can catch any ball that goes his way. His catch radius is amazing. I don't think there's a receiver in the NFL that can match it. Thomas, I think he has that record of being the most efficient wide receiver or something like that, which definitely leads into being able to catch any ball that goes your way. But that's where I would put Brees into the conversation. That Brees is just a absolute precision passer. But Hopkins, I think, he's just made catches that I don't think anybody else can make.
Consistently, he makes catches that nobody else can make. Yes. I think some guys make those catches occasionally. He makes them more often. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough because I feel, and this might just because I've been living on Twitter and researching a lot, I feel like because there's not much sports, everyone's talking about everything.
That's true, actually. Yeah. But everybody is genuinely talking about everything because everybody's home. Which move do you think probably needs to be talked about a bit more?
I think the best free agency move that is slightly talked about, but not enough because it's not a skill possession player, is Jack Conklin by the Browns.
Really? You want to get into that a little bit?
Titans had an amazing run line, unbelievable run line. Derrick Henry is a great running back, but they were saying he averaged almost a yard more running towards Jack Conklin's side. You give Nick Chubb's that running game, it makes it so that the defense can't cheat up their linebackers. They can't blitz the linebackers as much because Nick Chubb's gets a hole from a great tackle. He's going to kill you all day. If you're not blitzing as much, it's going to give Baker Mayfield some more time to pass. I think you pointed out they are missing a left tackle when we talked about this a little bit, so it might not immediate as big of an impact. I just think he's only 25. If
he's still definitely going to have an impact on there.
If he stays healthy for 3-4 years, I think he was the best low-key signing.
And the price he went for, too, was a lot more low-key than people thought he would go for. I was one of the guys thinking he's going to get Nate Solder type of money, and he went really cheap by that account.
Now I want to ask you, who is your best under the radar?
My best under the radar signing would have to be Connor McGovern. I think he went to the Jets, if I'm not wrong. And it's just really the same reason, because I value offensive line so much, and he was without a doubt the best center out on the market, and center is already an undervalued position. The center of your line, while it's not, the most important like a left tackle is, or whoever protects your blind side, the center kind of, in my opinion, anchors it down. In some cases, for young quarterbacks, they call out plays, they help trick the defensive line, and they help open up inside running lanes. I find that really helpful. I wanted Connor McGovern on the Giants, but the fact that he went to the Jets and that really nobody's talking about it is surprising to me.
Chris Sims, in a podcast I was watching, actually said Connor McGregor would be a better offense line signing than Jack Collins. The co-host said he was an idiot, but you have a couple of smart people at least agreeing with you.
Well, we'll see how it goes, but thank you, Dan, for coming on. It's been an honor and a pleasure. I hope we get to do it once again on your channel. I wouldn't be opposed to just, doing back and forth for however long we can. It's been really fun. Honestly, a great experience, man. Once again, guys, go check out Dan's channel, his blog, his website. And any last words for the audience, Dan?
Keep watching Kush's stuff as much as you can. This guy gets really in-depth. He's really smart. His website is great. His YouTube channel is great. Subscribe, follow him on Twitter. He's going to retweet great stuff from me, so that's good too. But just get out there if you are a Giants fan or if you're a football fan and you want a little bit more in-depth and detail than ESPN and Fox Sports and the radio is going, this is your guy.
Thank you once again, man, and we're out, guys.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. Put your comments down below. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Until next time, I'm out. Yeah.